Good day everyone, I am Joyd Columbus PW and now I am going to present the first cry or cry of Balintawak or Pugad Lawin. So what is the first cry? The word cry came from the Spanish El Grito de Rebelión or cry of rebellion or El Grito for short. This cry could also refer to the tearing up of cedulas or community tax certificates in resistance to Spanish government. This Philippine Revolution happened on 1896. This can also be referred to in the inscription of Viva la Independencia Filipina, which was literally accompanied by patriotic shouts. Therefore, Cry of Pugad Lawin was an event that officially marked the start of the Philippine Revolution against Spain. This is the historical event which Filipinos tore their cerdolas, which Andres Bonifacio interprets as a sign of the Filipinos is slavery to the Spaniards. So it is surprising that there are different versions on the date for the first cry of the revolution as well as venue. This controversy up to this time remains unsolved. It is believed that so-called cry took place in Balintawak, but others would say that it really happened in Pugad Lawin. Nevertheless, there are different versions to consider knowing the real date and place of the cry. So, these primary sources include Dr. Pio Valenzuela, The Cry of Pugad Lawin, Santiago Alvarez, The Cry of Bahay Turo, Guillermo Masangkay, The Cry of Balintawak, Gregoria de Jesus, the version of the first cry. They participated in the revolution as the witnesses on the happenings during the revolution. So let's talk about first Pio Valenzuela's controversial Cry of Pugad Lawin on August 23, 1896. This controversial version of the Cry of Pugad Lawin has been authorized by no other than Dr. Pio Valenzuela, who happened to be the eyewitness himself of the event. In his first version, he told that the prime staging point of the cry was in Balintawak on Wednesday of August 26, 1896. He held this account when the happenings or events are still vivid in his memory. On the other hand, later in his life and with a fading memory, he wrote his memoirs of the revolution without consulting the written documents of the Philippine Revolution and claimed that the cry took place at Pugad Lawin on August 23, 1896. So, I will read to you the Pio Valenzuela's controversial statement. The first place of refuge of Andres Bonifacio, Emilio Jacinto, Procopio Bonifacio, Teodoro Plata, Aguinaldo del Rosario, and myself was in Balintawak, the first 5 arriving there on August 19 and I. On August 20, 1896, the first place where some 500 members of Katipunan meet on August 22, 1896 was the house and yard of Apolonio Samson at Kangkong. Aside from the person mentioned above, among those who were there were Briccio Pantas, Alejandro Santiago, Ramon Bernardo, Apolonio Samson, and others. Here, views were only exchanged and no resolution was debated or adopted. It was at Pugad Lawin in the house, storehouse, and yard of Juan Ramos, son of Melchora Aquino, where over 1,000 members of the Katipunan met and carried out considerable debate and discussion on August 23, 1986. The discussion was on whether or not the revolution against the Spanish government should be started on August 29, 1986. Only one man protested and fought against a war, and that was Teodoro Plata, Bonifacio's brother-in-law. Besides the persons named above, among those present at this meeting were Enrique Cipriano, Alfonso Pacheco, Thomas Remedio, Senforoso San Pedro, and others. After the tumultuous meeting, many of those present tore their cedula certificates and shouted, "Long live the Philippines! Long live the Philippines!" So, that was the controversial statement of Pio Valenzuela. So, in my opinion, it is more probable that the first version occurred compared to his later version. This is because it was true that he witnessed the event. Then, it is much reliable to believe his first version since his memories are fresh, strong, and still vivid. Still, we should not disregard his story since time and other factors are ended warp and change your memories. So now, let's proceed to Santiago Alvarez, The Cry of Bahay Turo, on August 24, 1896. This version of the cry was written by Santiago Alvarez, a well-known Katipunero from Cavite and a son of Mariano Alvarez. Santiago is a relative of Gregoria de Jesus, who happened to be a wife of Andres Bonifacio. Unlike the author of the first version mentioned, Valenzuela, Santiago Alvarez is not an eyewitness of this event. As a result, this version of him is not given of equal value as compared with the other versions or authors of other accounts are actual part of the historic event. So as what I have mentioned earlier, Santiago Alvarez, a Katipunero and the son of Mariano Alvarez, who was the leader of the Magdiwang faction in Cavite, stated in 1927 that the cry happened at Bahay Turo, now in Quezon City, on August 24, 1896. So I will read the Santiago Alvarez statement. So on August 23, 1896, Sunday, as early as 10 o'clock in the morning, at the barn of Kabisang Melchora, at a place called Sampalucan Barrio of Bahay Turo, Katipuneros meet together. About 500 of these arrived, ready and eager to join the Supremo Andres Bonifacio and his men. On Monday, August 24, 1896, there were about 1,000 Katipuneros. The Supremo decided to hold a meeting inside the big barn. Under his leadership, the meeting began at 10 o'clock in the morning. It was 12 o'clock noon when the meeting adjourned amidst loud cries of long live the sons of the country, mabuhay ang mga anak ng bayan. So that was the statement of Santiago Alvarez. Now let's jump on to the third primary sources, which is the Cry of Balintawak by General Guillermo Masangkay. On August 26, 1896, this version is written by the Katipunan General Guillermo Masangkay. He is an eyewitness of the historic event and a childhood friend of Bonifacio. According to him, the first rally of the Philippine Revolution happened on August 26, 1896 at Balintawak. Correspondingly, the date and site presented were accepted by the preliminary years of an American government. So, in this event, Bonifacio and the Katipunan were then forced by the circumstances to take action. They had to attack or risk the annihilation of their organization. On August 26, Bonifacio assembled the leaders and 100 of comrades in arms in the hills of Balintawak, north of Manila. In an emotion-laden ceremony, the fighters stored their residence certificates to symbolize the termination of their loyalty to Spain while shouting the battle cry, "Long live the Philippines' independence." The event went down in the Philippine history as the Cry of Balintawak and is regarded as the starting signal for the Philippine Revolution. Today, a monument marks this site, which shows a Philippine peasant swinging the bolo, the national variation of the machete. So, that was the statement of Guillermo Masangkay. So now, let's jump onto the last primary source of the cry, which is Gregoria de Jesus' version of the first cry. August 25, 1896, this version was written by no other than the Lakambini of the Katipunan and wife of Andres Bonifacio, Gregoria de Jesus. She has been a participant of this event and became the keeper of the secret documents of the Katipunan. After the revolution in August 1896, she lived with her parents in Caloocan, then fled to Manila when she was told that the Spanish authorities wanted to arrest her. Eventually, she joined her husband in the mountains and shared adversities with him. In her account, the first cry happened near Caloocan on August 25, 1896. So, I will read the Gregoria de Jesus statement. According to her, the activities of the Katipunan had reached nearly all corners of the Philippines archipelago, so that when its existence was discovered and some of the members arrested, we immediately returned to Caloocan. However, as we were closely watched by the agents of the Spanish authorities, Andres Bonifacio and other Katipunan left the town after some days. It was then that the uprising began, with the first cry for freedom on August 25, 1896. Meanwhile, I was with my parents. Through my friends, I learned that the Spanish were coming to arrest me. Immediately, I fled town at 11 o'clock at night. secretly going through the rice fields to La Lorna. With the intention of returning to Manila, I was treated like an operation for, sad to say, it in every house where I tried to get a little rest, I was driven away as if people therein were frightened for their own lives. Later, I found out that the occupants of the houses which I had visited were seized and severely punished, and some even exiled. One of them was an uncle of mine, whom I had visited on that night to kiss his hand, and he died in exile. So, that was the statement of Gregorio de Jesus. That was the last primary source of cry. So now we're done discussing about the 4 primary sources of the first cry. In a period of heavy struggle and conflict, Filipinos of different backgrounds united with a common goal to resist colonialism. The revolution against Spain was sparked in 1896 after Spanish authorities discovered the Katipunan, a Filipino revolutionary society plotting against their colonizers. And rigorous analysis of eyewitness and contemporary sources concludes that the cry of Pugadlawin is an invented story. Then reconstruct the events in Balintawak when Andres Bonifacios Katipuneros assembled in Pook, Kangkong from 22 to 26 August 1896. Resolves the question of where and when cedulas were torn and when and where the initial engagements between the Katipuneros and the Spanish troops took place. So therefore, the cry of Pugadlawin raised by the Katipuneros against the trinomous Spanish rule in the Philippines in 1896 showcased not just the bravery and courage of the Filipino people but also their freedom-loving faith and nature. So that's all for the first cry of Balintawak or Pugadlawin. Thank you.